Hey everyone, welcome back to SisterCodes. I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Ashley.
And we're talking today all about what language you should learn if you're going to start coding. So, what do you think?
Okay, so I started off with Java, and I would say that Java is a really good one to start with because it teaches you a lot of the really good basics of object-oriented languages. But I will also say that if you want to start with something very easy, Python is a great one to start with.
That's the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk today about what language we both started with, and then also how you might be able to go ahead and start your coding career, I guess, and why your first language is so important. So I definitely think Python is the way to go, and here's why. Java requires a lot of understanding of what we call object-oriented programming, meaning everything in Java is in relation to an object. That's actually a really difficult concept to grasp, and I first learned that in an AP Computer Science class, and it took me probably better part of a year to fully understand what an object is, how it works. It's basically just an organized way of coding. And like Ashley mentioned, Python is a lot easier because you don't actually have any of that. You just have to think like a computer, which means every line executes in order. And I think that Python is a lot easier to start with because you don't need to worry about learning object-oriented programming or anything like that.
Yeah, I would also say that Python syntax is a lot easier to learn because it is very similar to like how we normally speak. You don't really need to learn any specifics, whereas Java, there are definitely some quirks and some syntax that you will need to learn. But I started with Java when I was at uni, and I honestly think it helped me build a really strong foundation for the rest of my coding career. And once you do understand object-oriented, it helps you a lot going forward.
I totally agree with that. I do think, though, it's helpful to learn object-oriented in some kind of structured way rather than just going online and reading things.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to take a course, even if it's just Code Academy or Coursera, Udemy, right? I think it's a lot more helpful to understand like why we use objects and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to just, write a really quick coding script, I think Python's definitely the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a point on syntax, every single line in Java has to end with a semicolon. It doesn't matter. Well, actually, no, that's wrong. There are some exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
For example, after an if statement, that's like a curly brace.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things can be really frustrating to a brand new programmer, and it can also distract you from actually learning the coding concepts. So I'm with you there on Python. But yeah, so my first language was actually Java. Like I said, I learned it in AP Computer Science class. So I had a very different way of approaching coding, and I didn't just go Google things and try and figure them out. So I think it's most important that you're understanding the process of coding, so you're understanding like what you're trying to achieve, and then also how a computer will actually go through and execute the lines that you've written. I think that's like the hardest thing to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is really important to be able to understand it. I think it can take a little bit of time. Obviously, if we're talking about other languages like C, then you will really understand how a computer thinks because you're getting down in like the dregs of it. But I wouldn't recommend like a really intensive language like C where you have to think about things like memory allocation and leaks and things like that. C is also just very structured. It's very intense. So yeah, maybe if you're just getting into programming and you're thinking like, oh, I want to write some code, I want to see if I like it, then I would start with either Python or Java. And we also wanted to talk about a couple of resources that are really good. So Kaylee and I have both used Code Academy, which is really great. They have some free courses. There are also some pro ones that you can pay for if you want to. I think Udemy also has some good ones out there.
Tutorials Point
is really great.
It's really good. Also, W3 Schools has some of the most, it's really simple explanations, but they're so helpful in just understanding small code snippets and then what that actually does. I sometimes go to W3 Schools for a lot of the examples that they have in there. I think that one's super helpful. Also, Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
I think the one caveat with Stack Overflow is it's not always what you're looking for exactly, so you need to be able to kind of extract out the information that's relevant to your search and then be able to kind of ignore the rest of it, because people have really specific asks on Stack Overflow, and the really simple ones like what is an object will probably just not get really helpful responses. And people will probably tell you to go look at a tutorial or something like that. So I definitely think it's better to start with something like a tutorial, like Ashley mentioned, like through Code Academy or something like that.
I would also say that if you are just starting out, you should try and make some type of project that you really like.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Because it's something that you'll be excited to work on and you'll want to figure out how to code it. So as an example, like this wasn't a project of my own. It was actually my first practical when I was at uni, but it was programming something to calculate the total for a birthday party. So you had to create a bunch of different objects. So it was like balloon objects and like cakes and stuff like that, cupcakes and things like that, and then you had to multiply them by however many, like the number of guests, whatever, and then create a total. But it taught me a lot of great things about like objects and how to use them, and then how to use some of like the math functions and all that stuff. So yeah, but obviously create something more fun than that if you want to.
Yeah. My favorite thing to tell people to create is a chatbot. And there's a couple different ways to do it. You can actually just create a really simple one in Java or even in Python using the command, like a scanner basically. So you're reading in like standard input, standard output. That's really helpful for also teaching you about standard input and output context. But in Java, it's really easy to do with a main method. You just initialize a really simple scanner and you wait for like keyboard strokes. But chatbots are a great way, I think, to learn a lot of concepts. You get loops in there, you get if-else conditional statements in there. You also get things like the main method, and then also just understanding how I thought a chatbot was pretty cool because it also teaches you about how things like Alexa and Google and all these things work, because they're looking for keywords, which is basically what your entire chatbot program does. They look for keywords and then have pre-programmed responses. Yeah, and it teaches you a lot about how like artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these buzzwords, it can be boiled down through a really simple chatbot. And you can get them to integrate with like Slack channels. So I've set up some really hilarious prank ones that just like responds poop emojis anytime like somebody said something about like, I forget what the keyword was, but like it would just spam the channel with poop emojis. I thought it was so funny.
Wow.
I know, that's like totally humor, but
Very mature.
it was so fun. And then it teaches you about like integration. So Ashley's definitely right. Find something that you want to build or a problem that you want to solve or something you want to automate. And then you'll be way more motivated to actually finish it and learn all of the concepts and get through the coding piece of it. Otherwise, you might kind of get halfway through and say, why do I care about this birthday party that I'm hypothetically coding for?
Yeah, don't make it way too complicated, because then you're going to be super overwhelmed, and then you're going to feel like, oh, I don't want to finish it. I don't know what I'm doing. And also, just a note, like when you are first starting out, when you're coding, you're going to feel overwhelmed. It's very natural. There's so much to learn, and there's still so much that we both don't know, even after going to college for 4 years, 3 years for you, and then working in industry. Like there's still so much more to learn. So just don't be discouraged if you can't get it on the first try. Like that's another big part of computer science, is just being resilient.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, once you've written that hello world statement, you are a coder. It's so cheesy. I know, it's so cheesy, but it's so true. Like, start really small, start with the hello world, start with the basics, and then just keep building off of that, right?
Yeah.
Learn something small every day. Definitely go for bite-sized pieces instead of like big chunks at a time.
Bite-sized.
Bite-sized with the Y.
Okay.
Too much cheese.
Too much.
Too much cheese.
But yeah, no, Kaylee's definitely right. And yeah, we hope that you found some of this helpful. We will link all of the resources that we were talking about below.
Yeah, we get asked this question all the time. Like, what language should I start learning, or how should I start learning to code? So we hope that you all found this video to be helpful, and let us know in the comments like how you learned to code, or if there's something that we missed that you think is really helpful that you want to share with everybody else watching.
Yeah, and please subscribe. We come out with new videos every week, so make sure that you don't miss those.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.